Yeah, so cybersecurity has been an area where we have seen significant innovation occur really over the past 30 years. It's not something that's new. What you typically find are larger transitions that occur within technology. So if you think back, we started with desktops, we moved to smartphones. Today, everything's connected, cloud-based applications. So all of those areas have generated I would say new concepts in terms of how to approach things from a cybersecurity perspective. It's caused new vendors to surface that didn't exist in the past, and several vendors have had to sort of recreate themselves as well. That's something that I would fully expect to continue to take place because, the backdrop of this, very simply put, is all of these companies are trying to solve one problem, and that's to protect IT infrastructure in some capacity. What they know consistently is that there are a lot of bad actors that exist in the market that have deep pockets and plenty of time. And as a result of that, that keeps all of these companies on their toes. Lots of innovation occurring in the private markets today. We track a lot of private companies in a universe that we've established. I expect to see many of those companies in a different form sometime in the future, whether it's being acquired by another organization or actually coming public over time is something that could happen as well. Yeah, so as far as the bigger trends within technology, and it's kind of what's been underpinning the growth from a technological perspective, but also as it relates specifically to cybersecurity, is in and around cloud. And so what that cloud evolution has brought about is a whole new level of sophistication in applications, in the delivery of those applications, the infrastructure that supports it as well. And so, I think generally speaking, there's not something in particular that you could say, oh, this is going to be the one thing that solves all. In fact, that's one of the interesting and exciting things about cybersecurity is that there is no end-all be-all. If you kind of think about where these companies are trying to progress towards, it's figuring out problems in real time and solving them as quickly as possible. So, if a breach or an attack takes place, it can be resolved as quickly as possible. I still think areas around cloud are going to be interesting. There's a long runway ahead of us, but there's areas like identity management that are becoming very interesting these days, and that's because of what has been happening with regards to artificial intelligence, seeing agents on networks now these days that are all AI related. I mean, that's a whole host of new problems and complexities that simply didn't exist in the past. Yeah, so look, ESG has been part of our process from the very beginning of my stay at Allianz and Voya. This is an Article 8 fund, so there are certain characteristics that we adhere to, one of which is a greenhouse gas emissions metric that we track on a regular basis. So we use the KPI relative approach, and that's basically, our mandate is to be improving what the score looks like at the aggregate level in comparison to the benchmarks that we're up against. To be frank with you though, cybersecurity by and large is made up of software companies, so that's less of an issue. Where I've seen more motion as far as what we're doing from an investment process perspective really gets down to the governance side of things. And so that's where I think there's a lot of value to be accrued over time. It's an appropriate way to think through these companies and assess what they're doing right or wrong and how to evaluate that. To us, a management team is extraordinarily important. So is representation on the board from, all different walks of life. And so obviously we want to have the best perspectives possible that are feeding into the decisions that are, causing a company to make decisions one way or another. And so, to us, it's something that is newer in terms of a topic that people like to discuss. But at the same time, it's very well ingrained with our, traditional investment process and philosophy as far as how we evaluate companies. So the the global conflicts that have been occurring over the past few years have really highlighted the importance of cybersecurity. And I say that specifically because, we've seen these conflicts evolve, and an integral part of what's happening every day today are cyber attacks. And that's to bring down certain parts of infrastructure, critical components of infrastructure, whether it's related to, the energy grids or water, things along those lines. I think that's something we're going to continue to see more of, and especially as we start to get more into this type of warfare where drones and other autonomous vehicles are part of this. So, I think this is going to be very important going forward. I don't see how that changes all that much, and especially as we move closer to that stuff starting to happen in reality. From a data perspective or privacy perspective, one thing that I try to remind myself of is we're living in a world that is getting increasingly influenced by digital natives. And those digital natives have a different perspective on privacy than I do as somebody who's approaching his 50s. So, when I think about my son who's 12 years old, he cares a lot less about what's going to be online about his profile. My parents, on the other hand, are people that would never want to put anything online, and that's just their perspective. So, I think there's a happy median somewhere in there. I think there are still safeguards that need to be put in place, especially around things like medical records and things that are truly private. A profile is a different perspective, and so I think, that's where we'll really start to see a little bit more motion from a governance perspective, really. And I'm thinking more about the governments throughout the world. They obviously have incentive to protect privacy as much as, possible. So I don't really see, again, how that's going to change all that much going forward. If anything, it becomes a more important topic, but maybe it's a little bit more specific to things that are happening within the world today, and whether that's taxes, whether it's medical records, things along those lines. One thing that, is out there these days, a company called 23andMe, they filed for bankruptcy. There's a lot of DNA information that's contained within that. I would argue that's pretty important. So that's something that, from my perspective, I would want protected, because I don't want somebody else to have that just for some reason. I don't know what that amounts to in the end, but I'm sure it's not anything good. I think one of the most recent examples that has really caught my attention is, as we continue to move down this path of artificial intelligence becoming more and more of a reality, you've gone through different phases. And now we're at the phase where some of these use cases and applications are coming to life. But in order to make that happen, infrastructure has been spent on, and that has allowed things like agents to now reside on networks. And it's a whole different way of thinking, because the whole idea is that you're going to be automating or replacing what a human would typically do in interactions. And what's interesting from an IT perspective is that each one of those agents theoretically could be viewed as the equivalent of a person. So that's where some areas like identity management come into play. I think there's certainly some compliance issues that would come to the forefront. And then finally, there has to be infrastructure to support all of that. So within that cross section, we've actually seen some interesting developments recently with companies that are actually held in the portfolio.